My name is Cody Price. This is my beautiful wife, Courtney. And I want to tell you guys a story today. Just to stay on. For those that don't know me, I am the son of Brother Price. I'm the grandson of Bill and Becky. And in a lot of ways, I grew up in this church. I may not be that familiar with people, but we take communion here every year. We're in town. Is that all right? Every time we're in town, we stop by for Sunday service. We've been doing it for years. My wife and I were actually married right down the street at the Glass Mansion, and the pastor before Wendell actually did the service. So we're very comfortable here. We're very thankful for this community. Would it be better if I just spoke? Okay. I'll try to talk loud enough.
Test 1, 2.
Thank you. Okay. So like I said, in a lot of ways we grew up in this church. And before I forget, I would just like to thank you guys, okay? Because one thing I do a lot when I speak in public, when I teach my class in English, I bounce around a bunch. Now, once the story begins, I'll be fine. I'll stay on task, I promise. But early on, I just want to get some things out of the way. I would like to thank you guys so much for Thank you. Okay. I would like to thank you guys so much for what you've done for my family. You guys sent an offering for some of the events that have happened. And besides the money, I'd like to thank you so much for the prayers. I can't tell you how much it means to us, and I can't tell you how much we've needed it lately. I teach 9th grade English at Mustang High School. I coach baseball and softball there, and my wife's a 6th grade math teacher. On exactly 4 months ago today, May 1st, she was headed to work and she was in a car accident. She was T-boned by a bus on the driver's side going about 45 miles an hour. She suffered a ton of injuries, which I'll go over in a minute. And on that morning, I did not get a call from an ambulance. I did not get a call from a hospital. I got an email from my assistant coach who works in the same building as she does. And he told me, he said, "Where's your wife? The secretaries are freaking out." And so I got up and I left. And I just started driving. I drove through her parking lot. I told my kids to please behave. I drove through her parking lot, and when I didn't see her car, I knew something was wrong. And you guys that have been in a similar situation, you know sometimes you just have feelings. And it was an instinct. I knew something wasn't right. So I started backtracking. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I called her sister immediately and asked where Kennedy was, our 2-year-old daughter. And she said she was there with her and she was fine. I said, "Well, who took her?" And she said Tracy did. So I knew that Courtney did not go her normal way to work. She took the way that I typically take. As I started driving, I called the Moore Police Department. I called the fire department. No one had heard anything. So I called her mother, who works for the Oklahoma City Police. She told me not to freak out, but there was a car accident involving a white SUV and a bus. My heart dropped. She then told me where the location was, and she said 134th and Meridian. I told her, I said, "That's I-40. We're nowhere near I-40. Courtney doesn't take that way." And so I just kept driving and backtracking. When I exited off 89th Street, and I know you guys aren't exactly familiar with the city, a lot of you. When I exited off 89th Street, I took Highway 44 back to our exit to 134th Street. As soon as I reached the exit, I was about to head home. I thought maybe she got in a fender bender. She was 3 months pregnant at the time. I thought maybe she got nauseous, went home. She couldn't call me. I didn't know. I guess it was wishful thinking. And as soon as I reached the exit, I realized that Meridian was the first street on the west side of I-44. So I turned right instead of turning left, and I ran up on the accident. Luckily, the car was gone. I didn't have to see that at that time because I don't know if I could have made the drive to the hospital. with that, I got out. I talked to the highway patrol. I said, "Where is she? Is she okay? You know, please tell me she's okay." He said they took her to OU Medical. He said she was conscious. I asked him if he'd give me an escort. He said, "No, I think she's okay." So I'm flying down the back streets, driving way too fast, and I get to the hospital, and it didn't look good. Courtney was in the neck brace when I finally got to go back and see her. She had blood all over her face and down her hair. She had given them the wrong phone number because she was out of it, and she had also told them that she wasn't pregnant. With that, I spoke to the doctors, and I just asked them, you know, is anything life-threatening? And I could not say the word die. I couldn't say, is my wife going to die? It wouldn't come out of my mouth, and it hasn't since. With that, when they talked to me, you know, they said she's got some very serious injuries. We feel like right now we don't believe it's life-threatening, but you know, she's in very critical condition. She broke her pelvis in 6 places, both sides, front and back, all the way around. She had a grade 4 liver laceration, a grade 3 spleen, and a grade 3 left kidney. It only goes to grade 5. She had a ton of internal bleeding. And because of the baby, there was a ton of blood in her uterus also. When I got to the hospital, her blood pressure was 70/40. She also broke 4 ribs. She broke 2 vertebrae in her back. The blood level took a long, long time to get back up. And when I say a long time, I'm not talking about hours. I'm talking about 16 days. We stayed the night in the ER, which I was thankful for because they let me stay with her. They got us up in the middle of the night and they moved us to ICU. They kicked me out. I went to get some clothes, eat some breakfast, try to get my bearings about me, so to speak. And I came back as soon as they would let me, which was 5 a.m. and visiting hours reopened. That was by far the longest day of my life. You know, I had called my parents on the way to the hospital. I'd called my grandparents. I had a lot of family there to support me. And I put on a really brave face, I feel, for the first couple days. And I have since. And I apologize if my emotions get the best of me. I've done a really good job the last 4 months of keeping them in check, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to talk about. I would like to explain that one reason I am talking about it, I was just going to come up and say thank you, but I do feel compelled. I realize a lot of you guys in this room might be going through hard times, and I hope that you can learn from our story. I hope it can help you. And I got that from a very good friend of mine, Matt Barash. He's a great Christian man. He's been with me through all of this. We grew up together, and People Magazine had called me. They got wind of our story. They wanted to do an interview, and then the Oklahoman called, and the Mustang Times, and the Mustang News, and the Duncan Banner. And I really didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want any publicity for what my family had been through. And he told me, he said, I understand you. You know, he knows me pretty well. He said, I know you don't want to talk about it, and I know you don't want to publicize it, but they came to you. And he said, you have a very interesting story to tell right now, and you never know how that might affect other people. And that's a lot of the reason I'm here today. The second day in the hospital, as I said, was by far the longest day of my life. Every minute seemed like a day, and every hour seemed like an eternity. I felt like the longer that Courtney sat there and didn't have her surgeries that she needed, she had 4 in 2 days. I felt like the longer she sat there, the more likely she was not to make it. And they ended up, surgery came at 2:30 that day. I hadn't slept. Like I said, 2:30 was an eternity for me, it seemed. All went well, but we had some complications. The doctor came in, and because of the breaks in her pelvis and because she was immobile for so long, she had blood clots all up and down her legs. And I knew it, I could tell, and I had a bad feeling about it anyways because her leg got so big. Her legs were so swollen. And we went back. After the surgeries, they gradually worked their way down. She still has those blood clots today, and I ask that you help me to pray that those go away quickly. Man, I'll tell you about our update more in a minute. But with that, the next day passed, and we had setbacks, but we also had progress. It was a balance of the two. And she gradually started getting better. Her blood levels took a long, long time to get back up, so I had a lot of concerns. Finally, after 8 days at OU Medical Center, all 8 on the trauma unit floor, they told us that we would be transferred to the Jim Thorpe Rehabilitation Center. Because of her pelvis injury, Courtney was not going to stand up for 3 months. Not only could she not walk, but she would be in a wheelchair for 3 months, and she was non-weight bearing completely. When we got to Jim Thorpe, we were very thankful, but her blood level was still really low. The OU doctors kind of had to tone me down a little bit. I was very concerned, and they knew that. They could see it in my eyes, and I do a pretty good job of keeping calm. But when it's your wife, it's tough. And finally, a doctor had to tell me. He said, "I realized that with you being her husband, her threat level is always a 10." And he said to us, it's about a 2 or 3. So they did the transfer, and we okayed that. We got to Jim Thorpe, and things gradually started to get better. Her blood level went up. I believe her hemoglobins were supposed to be at a 12. That's normal. When we got to Jim Thorpe, hers were at a 7. And she had already had 4 or 5 blood transfusions up to that point. After a couple days at Jim Thorpe, we were very happy there. They took great care of Courtney. She did her rehab, and I was so proud of her because the progress she had made. She was working on transfers from wheelchairs to boards to vehicles, and everything was going better. The time away from our daughter was killing us. We missed her so much. We're a very tight-knit family. My wife's an excellent mother, and it was really hard on her. On, I want to say the 18th, is that right? May 18th? They had talked about the weather for 3 days, and for my family that knows me, I'm a very calm individual. I don't get worked up about much. I don't stress a lot. I'm pretty laid back. I was a nervous wreck for those 3 days, and I can't explain it to you. I will never know, but for some reason I was nervous. And my parents had Kennedy, Courtney's sister had Kennedy, and they were driving and transferring her back and forth and taking care of her, thank goodness, while we were away. But on that Saturday, my parents were going to come up. They were going to help me with the house. My grandparents came down to help me with the house, and I went to Best Buy. I bought Courtney a brand new flat screen, mounted it on the wall, bought some stuff for the house, and our house wasn't the biggest in the world, so I had to clear it to make it handicap accessible. I'd been working on it for about a week at that point, and they came on Saturday. Luckily, the weather wasn't bad in Oklahoma City that day, so they were able to help me with that. And Courtney got to come home for the first time in 18 days, and she got to have what they call an afternoon away. It was a test run to see if she could get in the house, to see how everything went and everything was going. Kennedy got to be there too, and I'll never forget, my mom was just talking about this 2 nights ago. She was so excited. She was so happy to be home and to be with us again. And shortly after that Saturday night, the tornado tore through Shawnee. I don't know if you guys remember, it flipped a semi. And the next day, my parents were going to meet Shannon in Lawton and pick up Kennedy. Drop Kennedy off to Shannon. And I told them, I said, please, just be careful, watch the weather. I don't like this and things such as that. And, my dad actually asked me, he said, since when did you get so scared of storms? Because that's not my nature. And I told him, I just have a feeling. Well, I was a complete wreck on Sunday. I was nervous. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I was looking outside, checking the weather, listening for reports. And we made it through Sunday night. The sirens went off 3 times at the Jim Thorpe rehab facility Sunday night. And so, I was terrified. My wife's in a wheelchair. She has bars sticking out of her body. I can't get her underground. It's hard enough, and it takes long enough time just getting her in the chair. So I was worried about that, and it passed. Unfortunately, Sunday night, some other places got hit. And then Monday came. And Sunday night, when I went to bed, I actually stayed at our house that night because I was still prepping it. I was actually up till 2 a.m. cleaning it. The place was spotless when the tornado hit it. That night, when I went to sleep, I had a dream. And I dreamt that we were at the Jim Thorpe facility. And I dreamt that the sirens went off, and all the electricity went off, and everything got pitch black. And Courtney was scared. And she was asking for my help. And I got her. I put her in the chair. Monday morning comes, and I wake up, and Courtney calls me, and she says they're delivering the hospital bed. And she told me they're coming at 3 o'clock. And I said, I don't know, babe. I said, I'm fine with being there, but I'm worried about the weather. And it ended up they came at 1 o'clock, thank goodness. I called my mom shortly after that, and I shouldn't have said this. I told her, I said, hey, they're bringing the bed today. We get to come home. And she was so excited. And she said, that's awesome. I'm so happy. And I told her, I said, yeah, I just hope that by the end of the day we have a house to come home to. Again, shouldn't have said that. As he delivered the hospital bed at about 1 o'clock, he was done at about 1:30, got it all set up. And when he walked out the door, I was right behind him. I wasn't really too concerned about it. I just didn't want Courtney to experience that herself. I didn't want her to be scared and be alone. So I followed him out, went straight to the rehab facility, and less than an hour later, a tornado came. You guys know all about it. I'm sure you've seen the news and the devastation. As we were there, we were off Southwest 44th Street over at Jim Thorpe, and it was coming out of Newcastle, headed northeast, and the lights go out, and it gets dark, the sirens sound, and I thought, please, Lord, don't let my premonition come true. It's headed fairly our way. You kind of have a hard idea. You guys know when they say northeast, you don't know how far northeast. You know, I mean, it's a vague direction. And then all of a sudden it took a turn, and it went straight north. And it grew and grew, and we watched the whole thing on TV. And as it's going, you know, I had prayed that everyone be safe. I prayed that everyone was underground. I prayed no one was around that area. And I told Courtney, I said, babe, I think that's headed right to our house. And she said, no, I think it's north of us. I said, babe, I think that's headed right to our house. And it went through the neighborhoods, and God bless those kids. I can't even start to talk about that. One of the worst things we had actually seen was, one thing I'm thankful for, not the worst things. There was a line of cars. I don't know if you guys got to watch the news, but there was a line of cars that was just absolutely stacked on Santa Fe, which is where our house is and which is where the tornadoes blew through, off Santa Fe between 19th and 134th. And I had just prayed, please let those cars get out of the way. Luckily, 2 highway patrol had came by to clear the area. And what it was, I believe, was people waiting to pick their kids up from school. You know, after that, I had a pretty good idea it wasn't there. We had heard about the areas. They wouldn't let you anywhere near it, which was fine. I didn't want anyone being in there anyways if it wasn't safe. But, you know, I called my parents that night and told them, said, I think our house is gone, you know, and they were devastated. And I just want to say something to you parents out there. I can only imagine what it's like for your kids to struggle, to have hard times. I know it's a helpless feeling. But just because you can't take it away doesn't mean you haven't helped. I was raised a certain way, and I was raised to be strong, and to be tough, and handle things like this. And it sure came in handy, because I had a lot put on my shoulders in a short amount of time. But it was tough to tell them that, you know. I mean, it's tough. After all we'd been through, that within 20 days, not only did I nearly lose my wife, and we did lose a child, but also now that everything we owned was destroyed. So I went the next morning. I kind of snuck in before I guess they cared. I think it was too early for it to matter. I started walking through, and as I'm looking around, you can't tell anything. You know, there are no street signs. Everything is gone. Everything is flattened. I had to look down to see curbs to find our street, and I did. And I started walking back, and I remember not even looking up at the houses because there were no houses. You couldn't look walking in front of you. You had to stare at the ground and hope that you ran up on it. And finally I got to it, and I joked, there was about half a wall standing. But it was destroyed, and our garage was destroyed. Our kitchen was gone. And when I say destroyed, I mean there was nothing standing. The kitchen was gone. The living room was gone. Kennedy's room was gone. The only thing that was actually enclosed was our interior closets. The hallway was destroyed. The walkway, the bathroom, the spare bedroom was somewhat intact, but it was in very rough shape. There was nothing that was salvageable out of there. The only thing that made it was our actual bedroom itself, because it had the 4 surrounding walls. But when you would go up and kick the brick, it would just shatter and fall right down. So it blew through pretty good. Funny thing is, that TV I mounted that Best Buy would not refund me for actually survived. And it is in my daughter's room. She's got a nice flat screen TV now. And after being rained on for about 2 or 3 days before we were able to get it out of there, it's still good. So I guess I'm thankful for that. When we were able to actually get in, they kicked me out very shortly after. When we were actually able to get in, it was, gosh, an entire another day later. And, you know, my phone was being flooded with calls and text messages. And I remember just thinking, you know, everyone kept saying, you know, what do we do? What do we do? I remember my dad asking me that night. He said, son, what do you want me to do? I'll do anything. What do you want me to do? I said, no. You know, what do you do? You know, I was going through it myself. I didn't know what my plan of action was, so to speak. So, three of my friends that I work with, we all loaded up 2 trucks and we took everything that we could. a lot of what we saved we had to throw away anyways because it was nasty. Most of it wasn't worth it. And I remember telling them at first that, hey, grab everything you can. You kind of want to do it like you're greedy, grab everything you can. It's our stuff. Let's salvage what we can. But in the end, it got too much. It got to where it wasn't worth looking through it. I will say this, that first morning when I went back, and some of you guys, if you've read the newspaper, when we watched the tornado, you guys ever lose anything to where you're like, oh, please don't let me have lost this? It's like that, but everything you own. That's kind of what it is when your house goes through a tornado. You're just like, man, I left this and I lost this, and I just started naming stuff. But when Courtney and I were watching it, the first thing that happened after I thought our house was destroyed, I looked at her and I said, babe, your wedding ring. And when she had been in her accident and I had cleaned out the car, they had sent her ring home in one of the little cubes, and it was in her purse. And because I had cleaned the house and it was spotless, because I had done that, I knew exactly where her purse was. So as soon as I got there, that was the only thing on my mind. And I just started digging. And I started moving bricks and kicking piles, and I saw a strap. And I pulled the purse out, and there was her ring, fully protected inside the case. Thank you. And that meant a lot to us. I bought that ring. I had to wait till it went on sale. I was a poor college kid. And it meant a lot. It had a lot of sentimental value, And when I say I bought it, I'm pretty sure my parents helped a lot. So I was thankful for that. And we ended up taking all that we could. We actually, I found an ultrasound of Kennedy. One of the last days I went, I found her ultrasound pictures in the garage, which was crazy. Our basketball goal that was embedded 3 feet in the ground was ripped from that ground, had a huge hole, and it was 2 houses down on the left. But yet my daughter's, sonogram pictures were there. So it was pretty amazing. Ultrasound, sorry. After that, we were kind of at a loss. We wanted to go home, and we were tired of being at the hospital, and we didn't have a home. So we moved in with her sister, bless her soul. Shannon Lowen has been amazing. I'm very fortunate not only to have an amazing family myself with very supportive parents that I love very much, I'm very proud of, but also I married into a great family. And my in-laws are awesome. I got nothing bad to say about them. We're very thankful for them. And we lived with Shannon for nearly 2 months and her family, her husband and 2 boys. I guess you could say things started getting better. We were happy to be home under one roof, and we were happy to be together. But I had a lot to do. It's funny. I thought I was busy. I was dealing with car insurance and health insurance, and then the house hit, and I realized what busy was. Never been on the phone so much in my life. Never done so much paperwork. And, there were times I felt overloaded. I was overwhelmed. And, people saw the way that we responded. And I can smile my way through a lot of things. I'm a pretty positive and upbeat person. And my wife has been amazingly strong throughout all this. And, sometimes I lose sight of the fact that it's still hard. And so we got there, and I felt guilty almost because we were receiving so much praise for the way that we handled it. I was struggling, I was having a tough time. And I remember July, I just wondered, I kept thinking, my parents always told me, God doesn't put more on us than we can handle. He doesn't put more on us than we can handle. And I kept thinking, man, I got big shoulders, but they're getting heavy. And Kennedy, when July came, Kennedy had a urinary tract infection, and she had a stomach virus, and bless her heart, Courtney got a terrible stomach virus. Kennedy fell one day at Vacation Bible School when we were receiving good news that the fixator was coming out, which was a big deal for us. She had fell and caught herself, and she had what they call nurse's maid elbow. And luckily her arm wasn't broken, but I have to hold her while she's screaming in the ER. It was terrible. And she also had another ear infection. And I'm just wondering, this is too much. This is too much. I just want a normal day. I want to wake up one day and I want to be bored, and I don't want to do anything. And it was really wearing me out. And my buddy, he sent me a text, Matt, that I told you guys about, and he said, man, I thought about you today. In church they talked about how people don't dwell, they move on, and they're strong and they move on, and they don't look at the things and feel sorry for themselves. And I told him, I said, man, I sure do appreciate that, and that's a high compliment, but, I felt guilty that they said it. I said, I'd be lying, man, if I told you that everything was peachy right now. I said, I'm trying, and I'm trying not to get so mad, and I'm trying not to get so aggravated at everything that's going on, but I'm fighting myself, and I said, I feel so overwhelmed, and and he told me, and like I said, he's such a good Christian man. He said, just remember what you told me when she was in the hospital. He said, as long as you can take her home, you guys can get through anything. And I needed that. And another thing that I needed very, very much was we had been struggling. Like I said, I'd been frustrated and everything had been going on, and I just kept looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, and I wasn't seeing it, And we went to church, and our pastor, he's a great man, great pastor. He had involved Courtney in the message that day, and he was so glad to see her there. It took a lot of courage for her to show up. She was still in a wheelchair, she still has the eye patch, things such as that. And he kept telling us how good it was to see us. And it was after the second tornado and the devastation, and, the message was, where was God? And what he had said, and I don't have the scripture he did to back it up, but he talked about where was God when those kids were in that school? And where was God when the tornado came and they were all scared and the people were terrified and they lost everything they had? And where was God in Courtney's wreck? And he wrapped it up and he said he was there. And I know that he was. I can't tell you how thankful I am that he was. I think the hardest day of my life, hardest thing I've ever had to do, was when I went there that day. And I'm sorry I have to tell this, but I need to know the whole story. And they came in to check for the baby, and I knew it was gone. And I knew that baby wasn't there. And I was at peace with that, because I was worried about my wife. And when they checked, they said, we're sorry, we can't find a heartbeat. I said, I understand, thank you. And they came back in because they had to refer and verify. And I understand. And I was okay with that. It was really hard watching my wife watch that screen. And afterwards, there was a moment, it was just the two of us. And she looked up at me. And she said, I'm so sorry. And I said, for what, babe? It's okay. I wasn't going to cry in front of her. She didn't need that. And she said, for the baby. I said, it's okay. It doesn't matter. And she said, I just really felt like it was a boy. I know you really wanted one. And that broke my heart. And that's the first time I've actually been able to cry about it. And I couldn't do it in front of her. I walked out. I got my stuff together, as I like to say. I went outside to tell the family. And when I did, my daughter just got there. And she ran up to me. And she yelled, Dada. And she threw her arms around my neck, gave me a hug. And I remember in that moment, what seemed like the worst moment of my life, I said, God, please don't let me tell this little girl her mom didn't make it. And I thank him every day for that. And I always will. Now through this, to wrap this up, you can look at this in a lot of ways. You can think that my family has been through terrible tragedy, and it has. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish that day didn't happen. And I would give anything for it not to happen. And I would give anything to switch my wife places. But it did happen. And we have to move on. And I teach my 9th graders all the time that when things happen in life, you face them head on. It's the only way you can. And we found strength in God, and we found strength in family, and we found strength in each other. And I'm so proud of you. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. If you wanted to feel sorry for yourselves, you could find a reason. You absolutely can. And I think probably everyone in this room could. And I think we could. And I don't think people would really blame us for it. We've been through a lot. But our blessings outweigh that so much more. Throughout all of this, we have had support not only from friends and family, but from you guys, churches. We've had prayer throughout the country. We would get checks in the mail from people we never even knew. And they would say, we're praying for you, and we're pulling for you, and we're with you. And my wife didn't really tear up about a lot of this. We have tough times. We have daily struggles. There's still a lot from that wreck that we're dealing with. And the fallout, it's going to be there for a while. And I understand that. And I'm ready to face that. But what really gets to her is how nice everyone is. And in a world where you see so much bad, and you turn on the news, and then you turn off the news because you don't want to hear about it, there still is good. And there's good people. And there's blessings. And God is here. and he's here with us all the time. And for whatever reason, we were not intended to have that child. I don't know why. I'll never know why. And I'm okay with that. But God knew why. And it worked out that way, and we'll accept that, and we'll move on. And if we're not able to ever have another kid, you guys should see my daughter. She's amazing. She's an angel. And, I can't tell you how happy I am every day to wake up and see her, and every day to wake up and be beside my wife, because that's not guaranteed. And we realize that every day is a blessing. It's a short time we have here on this earth, and we take it as such. And one thing, if this experience has taught me anything, it's that we don't take things for granted anymore, and we're very happy for that. And so what seems like a sad story, I'm not sure it is. Like I said, I wish that it didn't happen, but it did. And we have learned a lot from it. I've grown from it. Also, if this whole teaching and coaching thing doesn't work out, it could either A, be a male nurse, or B, be an insurance agent. So I just want to thank you guys again. And there's so many things I could say. There's so many other people I'd love to say thank you to. And I definitely want to take this time to say thank you to my parents. I love you guys. My grandparents, I love you guys. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm very proud of my wife. I couldn't be more proud of my wife. In 25 days, we're going to celebrate our 4th wedding anniversary. Thank you. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. So thank you guys for your prayer and support. As far as an update goes, we recently moved to Mustang in mid-July. I now live a mile and a half from work rather than 30 minutes. I'm happy about that. We love our house. We love the community. We're very happy with where we're at. On Thursday night, Courtney went to get her eyes checked. Because of the impact of the accident, her nerves behind her eyes twisted. And she can see fine out of her left eye, and she can see fine out of her right eye. When she looks out of both, she has double vision. It gives her headaches. If you guys saw her today, you see the glasses I hooked up. We alternate them. But we found out on Thursday night that the vision is getting better. It's slow, but it's getting better. We go every week to have her blood checked at the Coumadin Clinic. It hadn't been where it's supposed to be yet, but we just keep praying that it gets where it's supposed to be, and we pray that the blood clots are gone, and we ask for your continued support, and we ask for your prayer, because it's very powerful, and without it, we would have never made it through the situation. Again, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Brother Wendell for letting me speak today. I hope that somehow it's impacted you, hopefully for the good, and like I said, we don't want you to feel sorry for us. It's not about that whatsoever. We just want you to realize that we're very thankful for you and the people around us. Thank you all.
Something I would like to just add to that. He's talked about progress and the progress that's been made. I'm going to come stand up here, brother. Stand up, brother. Stand up, sister. Come on up here. Turn around and look at everybody. This is his mom and dad, and they're glad to be here. But this is Courtney. And as you can see, Courtney got up, stood up, walked over here. She's not supposed to be doing that today. According to what the doctor said, she's still probably maybe just be trying to get out of a wheelchair right now, right?
Out of a walker.
Out of a walker. She's not supposed to be walking unassisted at all. Until October. But she is.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. So it's a testimony to your guys' faith. It's a testimony to what prayer can do. It's a testimony to how much God does love and care for us. And I'm so glad and so thankful that you're able to be here today. And you want to say something to the church?
I don't know if
You
I
don't?
can.
That's okay. If you can't, that's all right. We understand. You can go ahead and sit down tonight if you want to, guys. Thank you, guys, for. There is a God. He does know what's going on. He does care for us. And I think I've learned something today. You guys know my story. You know what I've been through, but it can't even begin to. That you've kept your faith when you could have been mad and angry and upset and cursed God. You haven't. That encourages me. And brothers and sisters, how great is our God? It says, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art. How great thou art. Our God is a good God. I know I don't even quite know how to let this thing end. Don't even know if I'm ready to let it end yet. I know all of us can probably go back to times and say there's been a pretty low moment. There's been a pretty low time. Probably look at it and say, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I think today has been testimony that God gets us through it when nothing else. When there is nothing else. When there's no house, there's no car. You still got God. And God has answered prayer. They get to celebrate 4 years of wedded bliss together, right? I don't know what else to say. So I won't say anything else. Through this experience, maybe there's someone who needs to come to an altar of prayer this morning. Maybe this morning you're saying, man, I thought things were tough. And they are, because every situation to each and every person is a tough situation, no matter what it is you're going through. That's not to say that whatever one of us might be experiencing today is not real. It is not hurtful. It's not got us in a place to where we don't know what the next step is or what the next move is. But there is a God. And He will listen. So if the Lord is speaking to you this morning and you need to come to an altar of prayer, don't hesitate. Come on. If maybe you need today just to have a conversation with the Lord about whatever situation is going on inside of your life today, talk with Him. We've talked time and time again about how God hears. Not only does He hear, He listens. And I think we've seen an example of what family means. Of what it means to have a close-knit family, a family that comes together when things get tough. But I think we've also seen what it means to have church family. And how church family can come around and support, be there, and do different things to help. I'm usually not at a loss for words. I am. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for coming and sharing this experience with us. Thank the two of you for being brave enough to come and share your experience with us. Brothers and sisters, there is a world outside of these doors that need what these two young people have in their life today. Let's go out and be that light to those people. Amen. If you would, stand with me. We'll be dismissed.